We hope you enjoy this episode of the Modern Arizona podcast. But first, an important message for our listeners.
Hello, this is Billie Tarascio, owner of Modern Law. We're a family law firm in Phoenix, Arizona, with offices throughout the state. We have attorneys who can help you with every aspect of your family law case. We also have a legal clinic run by students for those of you who need budget-friendly resources, and we have lawyers who've been practicing for more than 20 years. Collectively, Modern Law has more than 200 years of legal experience. So when you hire Modern Law, you're not just getting an attorney, you're getting a team. If you live in Arizona and need representation, call us today. That's 480-649-2905 or visit us at mymodernlaw.com. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Modern Arizona podcast. I'm your host, Billie Tarascio, today joined by candidate Laura Metcalfe. Laura, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. So tell people, what are you running for?
So my race is called the Maricopa County School Superintendent's Office race, and it is a county-wide support agency for 58 school districts here in Maricopa County.
Yeah, so the superintendent is kind of the oversight governing body for all schools in the county, private, charter, and public. Is that right?
It doesn't oversee them. That is done at the local level with local school boards.
Okay.
It is a support agency. And what it does do is it replaces school board members from public schools, not charters or privates, when those individuals step down. And so there is that oversight of making sure that there is a replacement at a school board.
Mhm.
If a school board member steps down, they move away, they don't want to continue with their term. But this agency will support that effort. They also oversee school bond overrides and school board budget bond elections and school budget override elections as well. So it supports all of those measures, and it also can provide support to school districts to make sure that they are helping students with meeting academic achievement, teacher professional development, curriculum, anything that a school district needs that doesn't have resources for, this office can fulfill that.
Okay. So one of the things I'm still not exactly clear on is what the relationship is between the superintendent and the school boards.
So the county school superintendent is simply the replacement mechanism for school boards.
Okay.
We don't oversee any school districts or any school boards. We simply oversee the election of candidates who are running for school board. And if those individuals who are already elected step down, this is the agency that replaces them, working with the school districts to make sure that that board seat is filled.
Okay. So at the superintendent level, what are the duties?
So the duties of the county school superintendent, there's several. So first of all, it's the oversight of the school superintendent's office, which provides the support for school districts in various fashions.
Okay.
It also brings in grants and can facilitate the payment and oversight of those programs.
Okay.
It oversees the private school support. It doesn't take ESA school vouchers. It only provides a clearinghouse of information for individuals who are homeschooled. It also transacts financial payroll and things of that nature for all of the school districts. It houses all of the school district teacher and administrator certificates for the county. And then again, as I mentioned, it oversees elections for school board candidates and the replacement of school board members who step down from their seats. So there's a couple other pieces it does. It oversees the Accommodation School District, which is a public school district, and the school superintendent, the county school superintendent, acts as the school board for that accommodation district. So statutorily, that is what this office does.
Okay. So that sounds largely administrative.
Correct.
Okay. So the superintendent's office is not making policy.
No.
Okay.
They can support the process for
Sure.
policy, but the office itself by itself does not do that. There is an association of all of the county school superintendents in the state, and that is the policy making body, if you will, that can agree on what kind of policies need to be pushed through at the legislative level, but it's done as a collective association, not out of an individual office.
Okay. So what's interesting to me is I guess I don't exactly understand why it's a partisan position.
So it was a partisan position. So the offices, I should say, across the state were implemented in 1871. And originally, before the state became Arizona, and it was a legal state, this was an appointed position based on what the territorial governor wanted to have in this, whoever he or she wanted, he probably wanted in this position. So when the state became, in 1912, when Arizona became a state and joined the Union, when they crafted the Constitution, it was determined that this seat, and along with the state superintendent, would be a partisan position, so that way it would reduce the level of corruption and cronyism that might take place. So
Hmm.
that is why it was a partisan position.
Okay. All right. What led you to run for the office?
So that's a really good question. I actually worked in the county schools office. I was the small schools administrator. And my role there, that's kind of where all this comes from. My role with the county superintendent's office was the small schools administrator. And my duties were to go out to all of the rural school districts in Western Maricopa County and provide them whatever they needed. So for example, I oversaw a lot of their state and federal grants. I managed a portfolio of between $400,000 and $500,000 because they didn't have people to complete that for them on site. I also was on site at many of those school districts, and I completed whatever they needed. So for example, at one of the elementary school districts, they didn't have a lunch lady. So you're looking at your lunch lady right here. And then I would drive down to Gila Bend Unified. And in the same day, I was their director of curriculum and instruction because they didn't have anybody to help update their curriculum. And I did various roles for each of the school districts based on what they needed at the time. So that was one reason. The other reason I'm running is because the Accommodation District, as I mentioned, that is the school district that is part of this office. That Accommodation District is a countywide district that provides right now under law provides education for kids who are in detention, because when they are disenrolled from their public schools, the public school has no oversight for their education, and that's what this office and this school district will provide. The other part of this school district that is in place right now is a high school called Hope Academy, and it provides education for kids who have been maybe withdrawn from their public school for one reason or another, can't get back into their public schools due to expulsion or disenrollment for one reason or another, court involved, they don't feel comfortable going back to their home schools. So it's sort of an alternative education opportunity. And my role with that school district was the state and federal programs director, where I managed another portfolio of between $1 and $2 million in state federal grants for the school district. And I was also the special education director, and I also served as a grant writer. So right now, what's happening with those two entities, and that is my personal experience with them, is the Accommodation District now has a debt level of anywhere in excess of $10 million. And the county schools office itself is not providing any services or supports to any of the 58 school districts here in Maricopa County. And when I saw that this was happening, and I saw the developments that I had been tracking over the last two plus years, I decided that the individual who's in there now as the incumbent really doesn't know what he's doing. And he is the reason for a lot of what's been going on. Because when I worked for the Accommodation District, we had an advisory panel that was an appointed number of citizens from Maricopa County, but they acted and were trained just like an elected school board. Well, the incumbent dismissed that group in January 2017. He also fired the superintendent of the Accommodation District about a year later. And the incumbent was running the entire school district as the school board, as the superintendent, and as the fiscal agent. He was taking in all the money, approving all the money, allowing for and approving the disbursements of state and federal funds for the school district. And he doesn't know what he's doing. And so now here we are, about 2 years later, and we have this massive amount of debt, which could take this school district into what's called state receivership, where the level of income is much lower than the debt level. It's like a bankruptcy for a government institution. In this case, it's for a school district. And I'd had enough of him. He's not the brightest bulb in the fixture. So I decided that I was going to run and try to fix these areas because I have that experience.
So fiscal management is the biggest problem and your biggest priority with this office.
Correct. And I do have a process, a solution for all of that. I'm happy to explain that if you would like for me to do that.
Yes, but before we even do that, how does a government agency, and is it appropriate to call this a government agency?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right. So I just want to make sure my lingo is correct. So how does a government agency run a deficit of $10 million? Where does the money come from? How does that work?
So it's complicated, but I'll try to break it down for the viewers and the listeners. So in the case of the Accommodation School District, which is a public school district here in Arizona, here in Maricopa County, students are the funding for this school district is based on enrollment, just like any other public school district. There is a set amount, there's a base aid level, and then there's some other pots of money that can be added on top depending on different circumstances, which get to be very complicated. But there's a base aid for students who enroll in this school district. So if you have 100 students and you basically have a base aid of about $5,000 per student, well, that's what, $5 million or something like that, if I'm not doing my math correctly. So if you use that, that's what the income would be. And then on top of that, there are supplemental grants, such as federal grants and state grants. So federal grants would include some things called Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV, and others that supplement the state money that is provided to the school district. So let's just say the entire balance of income for this school district for this school year is $3 million.
Okay.
School districts are allowed to hold what's called capital assets. Capital assets basically are buildings, land, anything over the value of $50,000, vehicles, things of that nature. And in this case, this particular school district was a parcel of land was purchased in 2005 for the school district to build a new high school on. And in Arizona, we have an entity called the School Facilities Board. And basically, they are the purchasing agent, if you will, for land, for reconstruction of buildings, for building improvements, things of that nature for schools. So basically, that takes that burden away from the school districts and it puts it out to a state agency. So the state agency, again, is called the School Facilities Board. And in 2005, that agency purchased 10 acres for the Accommodation District to buy it to build a high school. And so when I was an administrator there, we were looking to build on that 10 acres, but it wasn't in a residential area. It was in an industrial area that was not really good for building a high school. So what happened was we abandoned that position, kept that capital asset, and built another facility elsewhere. But where we're going with this right now is that the other element that we had with this school district was we had a line of credit. It's a private line of credit through a bank. And it was only to be about $2 million, $2,095,000, if I'm remembering the exact figure. And that money was only allowable for payroll, for operational costs, such as utilities, things that come up as an emergency that we can't transact very quickly. And that money on that line of credit had to be spent in accordance with county, state, and federal laws,
Mhm.
just like any other taxpayer money was being spent. Even though it came from a private line of credit in a private bank, it still had to be expended in accordance with state and federal USFR regulations and code and things of that nature. So you had to have a ton of approvals and things like that, and justification quotes and things like that. So what happened was that $2.8 million, or excuse me, that $2 million, $2,095,000 line of credit was expended by the incumbent for this school district without any state, federal, and county regulations in place. Then on top of it, he ended up spending another $800,000 plus, so brought that line of credit from $2,095,000 to over $2.8 million without any backup. Well, he started to get called out on that. And so what do you do when you have a debt? You sell an asset. In this case, it was the land, the 10 acres that I just mentioned. When the incumbent went to go change to sell that land, under state law, a school district must have permission from the school facilities board. There must be counsel on the transaction, and it must be put within the public realm. In other words, it has to be put out for the public to see that the land was being sold, what it was being sold for, and why. None of that was done. He decided to go ahead and sell this land by himself in a handshake deal for to an organization that was LLC'd 30 days before the sale. It was a cash sale based on assessor value of $7.5 million. It was never put in the public realm. It was never added council was never added to this, and permission was never granted by the state facilities board or the school facilities board from the state to sell the land. So he did what he thought was right, and it was wrong. And so what happened was that $7.5 million was then placed into a fund that was not publicly available. He also since he also served as the school board, he did not place that transaction on the school board agenda again in a public meeting. He basically took the money, he put it into an account, and never told anyone about it. So what happened was he was going to use that money to pay back that $2.8 million. Well, make a long story short, I got in touch with one of the board of supervisors, Clint Hickman, and I was at an event in April of 2023. And I said, the board of supervisors paid back $2 million of that $2.8 million line of credit. And I said, you don't have to do that. In addition, he sold some land that's been illegally transacted. And long story short, the board of supervisors in May of 2023 put out a resolution against the office and the school district stating they could not spend any more money than what was already in their approved budgets. So 2 weeks later, on May 24th, 2023, the board of supervisors gave the incumbent an opportunity to come and answer questions about where the money went and how he was spending it. In a 2-hour and 3-minute meeting, the incumbent never provided any answers, and the board of supervisors said, you will participate in a forensic audit that we will be ordering for you. And he said, no, I don't want to do that. And they said, no, you will. And so he backed down, and a forensic audit took place in October of 2023 and commenced in April of 2024. And that is where the $7.5 million of illegal land sale came to the top. In addition, the incumbent purchased another building without school facility board permission in May of 2023 for $6.4 million. And if we do the math between
Can I stop you for just a minute? So
Sure.
My original question was, how does the agency get to $10 million in debt? And so I'm really trying to follow you.
I know. I'm sorry. There's a lot there. It's an illegal land sale and commingling of money and the illegal use of that line of credit. That's the whole story behind it. You put all of those together, and that is where the $10 million comes from.
Is there debt on these land assets?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry. I apologize for the lengthy explanation.
No, I appreciate it very much. I just wanted to make sure that I was following.
Yeah, no. It comes from the illegal land sale, the $2.8 million on the line of credit, commingling of another $250,000, and another state and federal grant, federal grant that was expended inappropriately at $1.7 million.
That has to be paid back?
The grant for $1.7 million has already been paid back with a deduction in the budget from the county schools office. And the others, the other $10 million, the land sale and all that other stuff has not been paid back yet.
Wow. Okay, so if you're to be elected, you're walking into a disaster, a financial disaster.
Yes.
What would be the plan to clean up this very large mess?
So one thing to do, there's several layers here. First would be to speak with the school facilities board and come up with some kind of solution, whether they forgive the $7.5 million on the land sale, whether they allow payments for that money, whether they turn around and we have to sell the asset. The building, as I mentioned, has to be sold and it's paid back in that manner. Or the other way to do this is to increase enrollment for the school district, because right now that is how school districts are funded, to increase enrollment. Right now in this school district, it bumps around 80 to about 110 students and it changes consistently. So we would have to increase enrollment would be the ideal piece.
Okay, so let's talk about that,
Okay.
which is going to be challenging.
Yes.
But, the latest data on Arizona public schools is not good. Arizona's never performed really well, and it seems to be getting worse.
Correct. We're 51st.
It doesn't get worse than that. And I know that you, in this elected position, I understand that it wouldn't be your job to fix that mess, but you are a professional in this area. And just me as a voter and as a mom, like, what is going on? Why are our schools the worst?
So that I can try to balance that with an easy answer. And it's because our legislature does not value public education. When they look at the pie for the state budget, public schools comes in at right around 50%, give or take. And when the budget is being created and you look at the pie, you want to slice from the biggest piece of that pie and give it to other elements, such as state agencies or what have you. And so they find different ways each year that the legislature is in place to cut that pie. And most recently, and slowly over the last 20 years, has been, or even 30 years, number one has been charter schools, because that money will go to charter schools. Even though charter schools are publicly funded, there's less accountability for the way that money is spent. That was one bomb. The next bomb was the ESA school vouchers. That, and also different cuts and failures to fund different line items in school district budgets, are all culminating for why we are the lowest paid or the lowest funded set of schools here in the United States. So it's over time and in a variety of ways.
Let's assume that ESAs aren't going anywhere and charters aren't going anywhere. Let's assume that.
Yeah.
How do we get out? How do we improve Arizona schools? All schools, charter schools, private schools, public schools.
I think the pieces that we need to consider are the levels of accountability, fiscal accountability. For example, right now we have 3 different versions of that. Public schools, Tempe, Mesa, Chandler, Scottsdale, all of those school districts here in Maricopa County have a very tight level of fiscal accountability. Charter schools are publicly funded, but they are privately operated. They have very little fiscal accountability. They are not required to provide annual audits or public records. They have to submit a public budget, but they are not required to publicly have audits every year like public school districts or traditional school districts. And then we have ESA school vouchers, which have all of homeschool, micro schools, and those types of organizations, which have zero fiscal accountability. Mm-hmm. And so when you look at the pie and you have money that's being overseen in different levels, the level of, I shouldn't say abuse, but the level of accountability and reporting and being able to use that money appropriately diminishes from where the public schools are to where the ESA school vouchers are. And, when you hear school vouchers, people are buying dune buggies and pianos and things of that nature. Public schools can't do that. If you are able to rein all of that malfeasance in and keep a tighter rein on how that money is spent, then you don't have the level of fiscal malfeasance or misappropriation of funding as you would at the public school district level. And so when you bring that in, or you make that transparent and it stops, then our schools are going to be able to be more funded than it would be if we were to just simply let the money go out as it is in these cases of charter schools and public schools. And I do have a couple of solutions that I can bring up if you'd like.
Well, I just want to push back on this a little bit because the public schools have the highest level of accountability and they're not performing well. So I don't understand how accountability equals performance.
So in certain cases, probably not, because our public schools, for example, let's look at our traditional public school districts, which are underfunded, and you're right. There are some school districts that are not doing well whatsoever, and they're not doing any kind of service for our schools or our students. So when you have a public school district who has unqualified teachers, or you have classrooms with 20, 30, 40 students in them and a single teacher, and you have a public school district that doesn't have the funds or the availability to buy updated curriculum to meet state standards or resources for that. Because as a teacher, I had to buy my own resources for my classes. When I was a principal, I had to buy resources for my teachers in order to carry out their classes. You look at a very reduced level of instructional capability and ability without resources. It's the same thing as hiring somebody, asking them to do a big job and not give them the resources to do it, or not give them what they need to do it. So what you end up doing is a teacher with 20, 30, 40 students in a class, when one person, and you have special education students, you have students who are ELL, it becomes very difficult to meet all of those individual student needs and those accountability levels.
Right. So we just need more teachers, higher standards for teachers, lower classroom sizes, kind of basic stuff that we kind of all know needs to happen to fix schools.
Yes.
But all of those things cost money.
Yes, they do. And that helps. Money being one part of the picture, not always everything, but helps. It helps a lot.
Yeah, I mean, money that goes over to buy land in an industrial area where you're not going to build a school isn't going to help students.
Exactly.
This is Billie Tarascio, owner of Win Without Law School and Modern Law. Win Without Law School is a program that operates nationally and helps people who are representing themselves or who just need more help. If you are in a family court case and you're feeling confused, you need direction, you need help figuring out questions to procedural or strategic issues, Win Without Law School can help. At Win Without Law School, you've got two experienced attorneys, me and my partner, Julie Lebenz, who can guide you through the court process and help you troubleshoot your case. You've got access to courses, planners, checklists, and live Q&A. Our live Q&A is where you can get help from us and your community. We also have a closed Facebook group just for members where you all can share your experience, share your pleadings, get advice, and mentorship. Join us today at winwithoutlawschool.com. That's winwithoutlawschool.com. You were going to give me some ideas and examples that you had before I interrupted you with my question about accountability. So let's get back to what you were going to say about what are those ideas that you have?
Okay, so in order to make this mess better, the first level that I'm planning to bring into this situation, both on the office side and on the school district side, is fiscal accountability. And to ensure this without going over the budget, because remember, there's a cap on what can be spent in both of these entities. I am looking to bring in a full-time, on-site, 30-year professional who will be an embedded auditor. Her title will be Director of Fiscal Compliance. And her job will be to be an internal auditor, working with external auditors as well, because that is a requirement, to make sure that those budgets and the transactions are all in accordance with state and federal and county regulations, both on the school district side and on the office side. And then what we will be doing is we will be putting out every month, 3 months, 6 months, and every year, a report to the people of Maricopa County in an understandable format, so that way they can see where that debt is and how that debt is reducing and being able to be either repaid or accounted for, so that way their money is not being mysteriously misspent. That will
Can I ask
also,
you a question? Sorry.
Sure.
Can I ask a question? So would the auditor audit public schools, charter schools, private schools, ESA?
So the auditor right now that I'm talking about would only be in the Maricopa County Superintendent of Schools office and the Accommodation School District.
Okay, just
No.
the agency. Got
Correct. Just the agency alone.
Okay.
And then we will work with the Board of Supervisors to be accountable and transparent to them about where this money is going, because that has never been the case since 2017.
How big? What is the total budget of the agency annually?
The total budget for the agency, I believe this year, if I'm not mistaken, oh gosh, it's in excess of $7 million. And then on top of it, the school district is $3.1 million.
Oh, the Accommodation School District in addition to the agency. So those are
Correct. Two
Okay.
separate.
Got it. Okay. All right. So, okay, I interrupted you again. You can keep going. So,
Oh, no, that's okay. So that is one layer that we're looking to ensure that, and then because there have been audits that have already taken place, I remember the Board of Supervisors ordered a forensic audit every year. School districts and the county agencies go through an audit. So working with the finance department, because there are staff there and they're very knowledgeable and experienced. But they're also very stressed out because there's just all of this stuff happening and there aren't enough people there to really hit all of the elements. So this individual that I'm hiring, the Director of Fiscal Compliance, will also be working with the staff and the audits to make sure that all of the elements of the findings of the various audits are also in compliance and cleared. And we will be making sure that those are cleared as soon as possible. Usually those are done within a year, but due to the level of debt, it may take longer than that. And that will be another piece, is we'll be working with the auditors that have already taken place and looked at the financial issues in there.
okay. Is the incumbent not running? Have they decided not to run?
No, he did decide to run, but he lost in the primary.
Lost in the primary. Okay. So the race currently is between you and Shelley Boggs. You are running as a Democrat. She is running as a Republican. Can
Correct.
you talk to me about what the difference would be if somebody votes for you versus Shelley?
Oh, absolutely. So let me phrase this in the framework of, there's a job opening. And the people of Maricopa County need to fill that job. And their choices at this point are two employees or two candidates, me and Shelley Boggs. My opponent and I sit on the East Valley Institute of Technology School Board together, and we've known each other. We work very well together on the school board. But I think when there's a hiring decision, whether it's somebody in a business or somebody in a governmental agency or whatever, you have to be able to understand what the office does and what the challenges are in the office as they are now. And I've already outlined that with the financial pieces. Then what the hiring decision will be is who's going to be most qualified to fulfill and fix the mess, because it's everyone's taxpayer money. So my opponent does not have any kind of school district leadership experience. I have 21 years of that. My opponent does not have any type of administrative experience or certification. I am certified as a school district superintendent and principal with 21 years of school district and school leadership experience. She doesn't have any of that. As I mentioned, I also have school finance background. That's a part of my doctorate degree and my master's degree. And each of the positions that I've held, both at the Accommodation District, in the County School Superintendent's office, and in the other leadership roles that I've had in charter schools and in traditional public schools. So understanding school finance is going to be a paramount piece on this job description, or this candidate that the people need to hire for this position. Also, being able to work with a variety of governmental agencies, public schools, charter schools, private schools, homeschoolers, and others are going to be very important. And I've done that working in that office and in that school district. So given the fact that I've also been a high school business teacher, not to say that business is really any application of this, but my opponent was she taught cosmetology, and that's fine. But cosmetology isn't quite the same as business, nor is it as any kind of level of school district and leadership experience where you deal directly with state, federal, and county level dollars and school district budgets. And I have all of that in place, whereas the last time my opponent taught was around 2014. And it wasn't a good look for her when she was with that agency or that school district. And there's been some other issues that have come up in her employment as well. So again, when you look at the idea of hiring someone for a job, you need to have the most qualified individual who can, with the knowledge, skills, abilities, and education and experience, fix the challenges that I've already outlined. And they're pretty deep and wide.
Yeah.
The incumbent does not have any of that experience. He didn't have any kind of school finance, law background, school leadership, none of that. And this started in 2019. He was only in office for 2 years when all of this started. So if you take him, and we have this mess now, and you put someone else in there who has no qualifications whatsoever, imagine the mess we're going to have. That is where I'm pitching, as I am the most qualified individual for this position because of my background, knowledge, skills, abilities, education, all that stuff.
Okay. All right. So let me ask you, because I don't know, and our listeners don't know, what has your opponent done for the last 10 years after getting out of teaching cosmetology?
Oh, I'm sorry. You froze a little bit and I couldn't hear your question. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, no problem. We can edit any.
Okay.
What has your opponent been doing since 2014?
Okay. So we were both teachers at EVIT, and she taught cosmetology and I taught in the business program. And I chose to leave EVIT because I was hired as a principal. And then she chose to leave EVIT under some duress with a cease and desist, couple of cease and desist letters, because she was putting things out on social media about the administration, and she was asked to resign. From there, she was hired in Chandler Schools as a classroom aide or a paraprofessional. And there were some other issues there where she was in essence harassing her supervisor, and she was asked to be dismissed from that position. And then she was hired in Queen Creek Unified, and she was a career office specialist, meaning career specialist, helping kids find their careers that they want to do when they're outside of high school. And there were some issues with that, and she left that position as well. From there, then she went and she was the assistant for Jake Hoffman, who is the Republican in charge of the Freedom Caucus. She was his assistant secretary or executive assistant. And then she chose to leave that position to run for this seat, because you can't do that when you're working for the state. And now she works for an organization called Moms for America, which is an organization that coaches conservative Republican school board members on how to conduct themselves and on policy, and she coaches them while they're on the bench and while they're on the dais and preparing them for their meetings. Some of her clients include individuals on the Peoria School District Board, Mesa School District Board, Deer Valley School District Board, Chandler School Board, and things of that nature.
Okay. We only have a couple minutes left. What else would you like voters to know about you? Or what else do you think voters should know to help them decide who to vote for?
Well, I think knowing who I am and what my background is, and that I am qualified for this position with the 30 years of public school experience being in the classroom and at the district and the school district level and the level as an administrator in working with budgets and being able to see how state law works and the variety of opportunities that I've had to support teachers, parents, working in this office as in the county schools office and in the accommodation district. I fully understand how all of these entities work together and separately. And being able to meet the needs of those students, bringing in parents and being able to help them understand how this particular organization, how both these organizations work is incredibly important. And I believe that I am the most qualified individual that the people of Maricopa County should elect to this position to be able to rectify the issues that are in place now with the money that's going on and other issues that are in place.
Wonderful. If people want to know more or get involved, how should they contact you?
I have a website and it is Laura, LauraFor MCSS. So Laura for MCSS.com. And I personally answer all emails and we can reach out that way and they can see who I am. They'll see my platform on how I'm going to fix all of this, these situations. And then we can also get in touch personally and I'm happy to speak with them individually.
Thank you so much. I appreciate very much you coming on the show and letting us know more about the office and your priorities. I sincerely appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Modern Arizona podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, make sure to download it, like it, leave a review, and share it with your friends. If you know someone who would be a good guest or you would like to be on the Modern Arizona podcast, make sure to give us an email or reach out to us at mymodernlaw.com.